Severe drought and conflict in East Africa left more than 37 million people severely food insecure in 2017, as according to the UN World Food Programme. Emergency relief efforts helped much of the region avoid worst, with the exception of South Sudan, where famine was declared in 2 regions in early 2017, and the humanitarian situation continues to get worse. Jill Craig reports from Nairobi.
2017 brought severe drought to much of East Africa. Somalia was particularly hard hit. Large numbers of livestock died and millions of people were displaced.
Somalia suffers from recurrent climatic shocks every year, but every few years it has a regional impact. It's much severe than previous years because of the loss of several consecutive rainy seasons.
And, says Jordi Reich of the International Red Cross, animals are everything to pastoralists. Recovery could take years.
And I think that even if the drought is over, and again, it's a bit too early to say that, but even if the drought is over, again, people, pastoralists, will not get the animals out of the blue, while farmers still have a chance to plant their fields again, hope for the rain, and grow food.
Elsewhere in the region, that is not the case. In South Sudan, war, not drought, is the cause of hunger. And the government has faced accusations that it has hindered aid.
Basically, what's happened now is that from October to December, we're in the harvest season, when the harvest should be coming in, and food security should be at its best time in the year. But this year, for the first time, there are 25,000 people in South Sudan who are facing famine conditions in parts of South Sudan during the harvest. And last year, there were absolutely no one facing famine conditions during the harvest time.
In February, 2 areas of South Sudan were designated as famine-stricken, although later in the year, the classification was removed. However, the WFP says that the number of people at risk of starvation in South Sudan has doubled from last year.
The economy is in a meltdown. There is something like, for basic food, there are price rises of 250% in the last year. So the situation is becoming untenable for greater and greater numbers of people.
In August, the 1 millionth South Sudanese refugee crossed the border into northern Uganda. The rapid influx has strained the local food supply and left aid agencies scrambling.
I faced a lot of loss. I left everything there. Crops that I harvested are in the garden.
Exacerbating the effects of severe drought and rising food prices, the fall armyworm wreaked havoc on crops across the continent. In Kenya, the price of maize nearly doubled over the long-term average. And so people in East Africa are hoping that 2018 brings more consistent rains, good harvests, and peace. Jill Craig, VOA News, Nairobi.
One of the biggest humanitarian problems the world faced in 2017 is arguably the migrant crisis. Concerted efforts by governments and international agencies to repatriate migrants from places like Libya has ensured the return of thousands, but with a higher number of migrants still out there, the United Nations is setting a target to send back up to 10,000 of them from Libya this year. Take a look.
Libya is the main departure point for African migrants fleeing poverty or war to Europe by boat across the Mediterranean Sea. Many of them never make it to their destination and end up in detention camps. A total of 44,306 people have been registered as refugees and asylum seekers in Libya. Activists say the influx has led to worsening conditions in detention centers, where Human Rights Watch and other groups say migrants face overcrowding, abuse, lack of medical facilities, and a shortage of food. But Libyan officials deny abuses and say they are simply overwhelmed by a surge in arrivals amid little funds to accommodate them. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, which has been repatriating migrants to African countries, plans to send back up to 10,000 illegal migrants from Libya in 2018, especially the vulnerable ones.
we are going to send out of Libya 350 refugees. Before the end of January, we will send out at least 1,000, and in 2018, we are planning to send out of Libya between 5,000 and 10,000 refugees. Particularly, we will give priority to the most vulnerable: women, children, elderly, disabled.
The agency is also in talks with European countries and Canada to take in some of the refugees, especially those from countries where the condition that forced the migrants out in the first place still persists.
Repatriation of refugees can occur only if the situation in their country of origin has changed. For example, somebody comes from a country at war, if there is peace, they can return. But in most countries that the refugees are coming here, the situation is still difficult, so they cannot return home.
In recent years, migration and refugee matters have become major global issues, taking center stage at international fora. And the consensus is that the scale of the problem requires a holistic approach to solve.
A whole-of-society approach to migration requires all branches and levels of government and all stakeholders to be involved in policy making, implementation, and follow-up and review.
Illegal migrant arrivals in Libya and other transit points may still be fueled by traffickers who exploit unfavorable conditions in their home countries. But government and international organizations hope to move steps ahead by repatriating as many refugees as possible in quick succession.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top national and international news online at voaafrica.com. Be sure to check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Wishing you all a great year ahead of us. Joker Rogers has our last word from Lagos.
Thanks, Vincent. We look forward to bringing you another show next week. ChannelsTV.com is your source for news, sports, and other programming around the clock. I'm Joker Rogers. Thanks for watching. Goodbye, and have a good start to the year.